Welcome to Today I'm Talking to, and today I am talking to the incredible multi-hyphenate actor, producer, fight choreographer. She does everything, Maria Tran.
Oh, thank you, Carly. Like, seriously, that's a very nice, impressive intro. I feel goosebumpy already. I'm
Of
pretty
course,
ordinary, but yeah.
I feel goosebumpy. I'm very excited to talk to you. You've really done so much, and we're gonna get into all of it. But first, I just like to start off with a fun question. You
Mhm.
do a lot of work with like stunts and fight choreography. What is your favorite stunt and why?
It's interesting because I do stunts, but I'm not officially a stunt person in Australia, right? Because they have a stunt board and all that. And I only do it because in my films, I do a lot of independent films, and I realize it's not easy just to get someone else to do it. So you gotta have to learn it. My background was actually martial arts. That's where I came into stunts, especially with fight choreography. So the thing that I love the most when it comes to fight action is the choreography, being able to create compelling fight sequences that are fun, they're interesting, that keeps audiences on their toes. But not only that, fight choreography action is somewhat dangerous, but how do you find ways to work within that field and avoid any dangerous situation is something that I love doing in the field that I am when it comes to fight action and stunts.
Awesome. Is there a specific, okay, then I'm going to amend my question a little bit. Is there a specific scenario that you see frequently as a fight choreographer, or one that you're specifically like, oh yes, I get to like choreograph one of these?
Oh yeah. So because I've done and dabbled in various different martial arts forms, a lot of times people like to see me do like a scissor neck takedown or something that has a little bit more of an intricate fight choreography movement that gives it a bit of a wow factor. So that's the stuff that people tend to love to see me in. But to be honest with you, when it comes to action and stunts, I would still strongly suggest that acting is still the foremost. Like,
Mhm.
I've worked with world champions and even sometimes working with the top fighters in the world and realizing that if you put them in a fight movie and if they can't act, no matter how powerful their punches are and how many accolades they've got, it will still not sell on camera because there is a particular magic that actually cuts across when it comes to the camera and what that picks up as well. That the charisma of the scene or the moment and the how tension is built is what I usually love focusing on.
Totally. And I think in so much of your acting, or it's honestly indicative of how successful your movies have been and your career has been, is that this focus on story is kind of the central crux of it all moving outward. So you really started as an actor. What do you think got you into this art world? What from your past really led you to this place of like, okay, I'm going to be an actor?
Yeah, I mean, personally, like I was one of those naughty kids growing up, and left home when I was 16. And to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I ended up studying psychology because I thought it was the study of psychos because I always wanted to catch the bad guys, but it turned out to be something completely different. But during my university years, I kind of fell into filmmaking, like community groups would be making short films, and I would jump on board. And they predominantly love doing martial arts action. So we did a sleuth of YouTube content. And throughout the years of collaborating with them on a volunteer and community basis, we had different broadcasters, networks reach out to us and asking us if we wanted to be commissioned to make works for TV. And that was sort of very much, it wasn't something that I was planning, but that's how I got into film and television through the community route. And once we got in, we were making stuff for film and television. And once I did that, I was then, auditioning for other roles, but then I realized I was missing out because a lot of the different casting directors are like, oh, you're not really an actor. You're just like someone from the community who loves making films. You don't have an agent, you know, all those things, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I really want to do the acting stuff. And I feel like there are these barriers because I don't have a particular look. You know, I'm going to find out a way on how to, you know, build up, you know, myself as an actor. So what it's funny because a lot of times people, when they make show reels, you know, you might go and pay someone to make a show reel and all that. Well, I was poor. So what I did is I learned how to make films to then go, what kind of films, what kind of scenes do I want in my show reel? And then I just basically like make a whole bunch of that, edit it together. I became a show reel. And what's funny, because a show reel, whatever you put in a show reel is pretty much what you're going to get. You know, so then I was then asked to do a lot of action roles because nowadays filmmaking is global, right? So if anyone gets a hold of your show reel, they'll be like, oh my gosh, she's great in this. You know, yeah, we're gonna get her to go overseas to make something. And that's how eventually a lot of my works expanded into overseas. But to be honest with you, I didn't study film, I didn't study acting. And a lot of times it was just me reverse engineering what is needed to be marketing myself in a certain way, and then from there onwards just kind of leapfrogging to project to project to project. So yeah, so that's sort of my career. I made over like a dozen short action films. I then got into documentary because I was offered a role with another film production company, and then I started to work there for like a year, and then I absorbed all their skill sets on how to direct documentaries, and then I opened up my own film production company, and we basically just specialized in, you know, documentaries. But also, whenever we make enough money or we have a bit in the piggy bank, we would invest it in projects that we call our passion projects, and then we would make those happen and put it into film festivals and all of that. So it's a bit of a non-conventional way on how to do things, but in the long run you have more skill sets. So it's not just you know, acting. It's you get other skill sets that you can then utilize later on, which is like directing or producing or writing. And in particular, now I'm starting to realize that writing's a huge thing, because if you notice, a lot of actors, they're getting their own shows, but they're getting their own shows because they're writers. You know, they know how to write content, or they're stand-up comedians. So there's now, you need to have like probably about 2 or 3 other skills. Back in the days, all you need is just acting. You got to be good at that and that's it. But now things are changing. So you have to package that with other skill sets to be able to stand out. Mm.
Absolutely. And it's so clear that you're so passionate about the whole process, like the storytelling as a whole. I am so fascinated by so many parts of that. And I have several questions. One of the first things I want to bring up is that you mentioned that you left home at 16, rebellious kid. You wound up making a lot of movies on YouTube.
Mm.
Where you fell, where was YouTube at? Like, what was the YouTube you were interacting with when you were making these films?
Yeah, I think at that time, this is probably going back like 15 years ago, but YouTube was quite new. You could watch a lot of content on it, but like I remember that time, it was a privilege to even be able to make content and upload it onto that platform for people to watch. So that was very new, and to be honest, we didn't really think much of it. I think at that time, myself and a lot of the other creatives, we just wanted to tell stories that we want to see ourselves on the screen. So YouTube was like the screen. So imagine if you make something, you put on YouTube, you sit around, you watch it, you kind of feel like you are a part of the movie making process because it's now broadcasted outside of your living room. So that was the headspace that I was in. We didn't really think much about where it was going to go. Really, we were just like, and that was it, right? Because times back then were quite simple. And then, you know, things catch on. And one of my short films that I made, Hit Girls, co-starring Juju Chan, who's now moved on to making like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon #2. She's on the Fist of the Vengeance, I think Warriors, a bunch of really cool projects, right? So that short film like did really, really well. And I didn't know why. I mean, I know it's called Hit Girls, girl on girl action. I'm like thinking, I wonder if people are watching this because they're expecting something else. But still, it was something that I had producers tell me that they've never seen a woman direct and also is in front of the camera and also do the action and choreograph some really violent, bloody scenes. And it's from a woman's perspective. And I was really fascinating with that. It's a comedy, violent, ultra violent comedy about two women who are trying to hit a target, but that target is their childhood lover kind of thing, you know? So there's a really ridiculous concept. And not only that, they have to fight each other because they kind of do like him, yada, yada, yada. So I didn't realize that there was an interest in that type of content, and especially in the action space. Action space is usually dictated by men, you know, male dominated. There's like so many, like every single year, there's hundreds of like kind of like action movie types, Bruce Willis, kind of Liam Neeson type films, right? Even if there were films where there are women from the camera, a lot of times the writing are by men. So it's usually through the male gaze. Male gaze is when they look at a woman and they kind of go, oh, what does she look like that appeals to us? Even though she's an action person, how does that still draw us in to keep on watching? So, you know, that's the world that we live in. And I realized that if we want to break that, we got to participate and create content the way we want it to be and show that, and then also engage with, you know, the other gender and all that, but at the same time be able to be free to create stuff that you want. So I realize that's a big thing. And as with my acting career, like I find that I get on a lot of projects now, not just only because I'm an actor or whether I'm good at something or not, but because I represent some strong voices in what I believe in. Okay, so a lot of the work, as I said, I work particularly in the male dominated action sphere, but at the same time, I know documentary and I know drama as well, but I realized I want to choose the hardest genre to work in, because there I can then understand what are some of the issues, but also if I can make change in there, I can leverage that and then channel it into other things as well. So a lot of times when people think of me, they don't just think of me as an actor. They think of me as somewhat of, in Australia, they call it the activist. So I know in America, it seems like a bad word, but someone who really champions for change in a particular industry. And they do so through the creative works that they choose to endeavor or they create. So, and that's what I do. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that using art for activism and to find a voice is so powerful. And I think that having come from a space where it was like, oh, wait, this is a space where we can record our own things, we can put on what we want. And I think you are talking a lot about being a woman in film on every side of the camera and how people are like, oh, that's actually not something we see every day. Especially, not only are you on the directing and producing side, which is few and far between, the action side of things is very wanting for women. So you're really narrowing it down. So first and foremost, how did you get into martial arts? Where did that passion start?
Okay, so with martial arts, I got into it because when I think I was in year, I don't know, year 5 or something, I actually witnessed, I mean, when I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of things like Jackie Chan, Donnie Yen, like all the action films and stuff, right? Because for me, I'm like, oh, they're like the underdog, they're like the losers, and they have to fight the baddies and they win the day. I love that narrative because it kind of felt like me. So I remember an incident in school where you know, I saw another girl. She was getting bullied by a group of other girls in the bathroom, and I don't know what I was just watching her, and I know I kind of played back one of the scenes in Jackie Chan's film, and I kind of stood up and said, "Stop!" I pointed my finger and said, "Stop!" And I was like, "Oh my god, they stopped!" And I was like, "Oh my god, oh shit!" And they're coming at me, and next thing you know, I was getting beaten up. And then once I went home, I told my parents, and they were really worried because they're like, you know, well, from now onwards, if you go back to school and you're going to meet these girls again and you're going to be bullied for the rest of your schooling days, you know? And so they said that, you know, why don't we get you into martial arts? And then, yeah, so I learned Taekwondo at the local dojo. And it was quite interesting because I think for me as a kid, I was always very shy, very introspective, very nervous. I had anxiety speaking. Like for me to say even a sentence, I'll be like overthinking, and probably sweat beads will be coming down because I had a fear of being judged and being being seen as like, oh, she's the one that's the loser. It was such a big thing with me growing up after the bullying incident, right? But then after working and doing stuff with martial arts, I started to, naturally, when you understand your relationship to your body, like you understand that your body is supposed to be there for you to help, showcase your optimism in life, your whatever it is that you want to do, that the body is there to support that essence. So I start to learn, like, when I stand up taller, when I connect with people, when I speak, and allow myself to be heard. Because a lot of times when we speak, we kind of want to, we speak, but we want to rush through things, right? But really understand my presence. I realized I started to change how people started seeing me. It was funny because after I did my martial arts, I'm like, how come no one wants to beat me up anymore? I'm waiting. Yeah,
Come
when
on,
I
I'm
have these.
ready.
Oh, you just don't. Yeah. And then I started to get into competitions. I think I took it a little bit further, but like I think it was again being like someone who you got all this energy you want to just express,
Mhm.
and through martial arts I got to do that. So that was me with martial arts, and I dabbled in different things, but again, like I still found that martial arts had a male structure, a male kind of like framework. Because I remember some of the teachers were like, oh, for a woman, you have to serve the tea. Once you serve the tea, then you have to do the sweeping, and then once you sweep the grounds, then you can join and do the martial arts. I'm like, well, what about the boys? Like, they're different. So there was always some sort of strange, custom that made women having to be um, more supportive of a particular framework to be able to earn a place to be seen as a martial artist. So
And was this in Australia when you started martial arts training, or
yeah,
where?
yeah. In Australia. So in Australia, in Sydney, Australia, where there was plenty of dojos where I studied. But yeah, that was what I faced. I felt that there was some sort of barrier. And I think also it's because women are always seen as being the nurturer and the mother, like where kind of there's this expectation in every field that we should automatically do that, you know? And it really got me thinking. I wanted to challenge that. And I think when I started doing like short films and realizing that some of the short films I was making, that I was the lead in it, and the team that was creating these short films wanted me to be the hero regardless of my gender, it got me thinking, got me, maybe I can make change in potentially the film industry through making these small films that I get to be seen in powerful positions, in positions of control, and trying to take down the bad guys, and start to change that perception that women are only a certain thing or a certain persona or whatever. So, because films is powerful, media films is so influential to how people treat each other. So the stories that we present on film and television, sometimes people watch it, they go, oh yeah, that's happened, we should treat people like that. Oh, women are like that. Yeah, women are like that. That's how they should be treated, because these narratives are so accessible, and they're only things that are being floating around. So the only way for us to counter that is through our work of art, through our work as actors, filmmakers, storytellers.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's so fascinating that you got your start on YouTube, which is kind of this very open platform where it's like, oh, we can kind of put up things without really a filter. It's for because you said it was about 15 years ago you probably put up your first
Yeah.
piece, and YouTube launched in I believe 2005. So that's very early on. Do you think you would have been able to cut through the noise on YouTube today or been met with the same success? Or do you think it's more about like how has the landscape changed from where you started?
To be honest with you, the landscape changed a lot. And to be honest with you, like for me to go, oh, do I want to like compete with YouTube and to compete with the other content creators? Probably not, because I realize that people who, like for me at this moment, I really have such a respect for actors. And the reason why now I've developed that is because I realize acting, like when I'm recently I've worked on a big Paramount series, like doing lots of scenes opposite to Tim Roth.
Mhm.
And you know, him and I, when we were doing a scene together, he was just magical. Like, it was just, in a way, it's like, you know, I never felt act, because I always thought acting, yes, you're acting. Here's the lines, you gotta do things and you gotta hit the mark and all that stuff, right? But with Tim Roth, the man, he's like all etheric, you
Mhm.
know, and he knows when I'm not like fully in character to the level that he wants. He will call me out. And I remembered, because when we in a scene, we first met for our first scene, he was doing things, he was improving, and I kind of kept with my character. When the director called cut, he goes, oh, what's that? Are you method? And I was like, oh no, I'm not method. I'm like, should I study? Am I bad? He's no. And he enjoyed it. And each time I got on set, he was, and then one time I felt good. I'm like, oh yeah, we did these scenes. Things are going well. And then I remember doing scenes with other people. And then I started to, I wouldn't say copy, but then, sometimes when you work with people, you can think, oh, they're doing that. Maybe I should try a bit of that. And then I went back to Tim, and Tim kind of called me. I said, what, don't do that. I'm like, do what? And he's like, I know what you're doing. And I know what it is. It's like when you're in character, if you're really, 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 really in it, it's like as if you need to step away from yourself and let the character just do its thing. But if you're in it and your conscious self is still kind of like pulling the cogs and going, yep, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, the camera's there, I'm gonna turn this, like all of that, all of the intellectual side of acting, if you allow that to happen, people like someone like a Tim Roth, they it really bothers them because they're so, in the moment. So I learned a lot, and I learned that when you are in the moment and it's captured, it's something when people watch, they don't have to intellectualize what you're doing on screen. They can just feel it. It just cuts to the heart. So therefore, I realized that I want to work on acting more so than just being a content creator, because presenting stuff and being present to being happy is still not really always authentic. Like, yeah, you can be authentic, but then that's just you. But as an actor, you are putting your ego aside because you have to get into characters that are often not who you are. And if you can do that, that means you've really set yourself aside on this planet. You're like, you know what? I know who I am, but when I get in as an actor, I'm going to set myself aside to work and build on this character. And when people watch you, they'll be like, oh wow, I just didn't realize that she didn't look like that way. Because when I got casted in Last King of the Cross, like a lot of people, they had some commentary. They're like, oh, you don't look like Madame Tien, like the villainess, and you look young, you look kind of sweet. And when I got into character, like, and when the show's now, I think episode six now that just got released, and people like, you're freaking scary. Like you don't look like yourself. Like, it kind of, we look at your show reel now and like, oh, is that her? Or is that some other woman? And I'm like, well, I guess that's a good thing, is because you can transform. So that's why I find that I am starting to really want to develop myself when it comes to acting more so than just getting the numbers, getting the eyeballs, because it's always going to keep going, and people build a lot of anxiety. I don't know about you, but I meet a lot of people who, yeah, might look good, like, on these platforms, but when you meet them outside, they're always thinking about, oh, how do I do the next thing to get the more numbers? And I was like, when is what? YouTube just collapse? Dude, what happens if your TikTok platform just busts? Like, you still got yourself, and you haven't invested in yourself, then you're doomed, Yeah.
And I think that's so incredibly real. Also, quickly, you are, just to make sure we all heard it, main character on the show Last King of the Cross, which is super exciting. Congratulations. But I think it's so profound what you're saying about the idea that you have to be so incredibly present and happy with yourself when you're moving, both as a character and when the production stops and when you're yourself again, like that you have to be entirely present in both. Do you think your training in martial arts, because you were saying that was something that made you feel far more like present and more self-assured, do you think that there's anything from that that's carried on into the way that you perceive like acting and personhood today? Like, how much of an impact do you think that has had?
I think with martial arts, it allowed me to really understand and really embrace that when it comes to life, you're always going to like come across some sort of tension, right? Whether it's internal tension or external tension. And when we are faced with that, we have to find many different ways on how we relate to that. Now, you might find people in life, and I love studying humans, and I sometimes come across people who I'm like, wow, that person's life is full of drama. They don't want the drama, but everything is like dramatic.
Mhm.
And you think about it, and then, and all the things that go through, you're like, how is one human being so surrounded by the drama? But then if you kind of like really step out and kind of look at them on a big scale, the drama is what they identify with. That's what makes them feel alive, as much as they don't want it, but that there is that. Because a person who a lot of times, like for me, like, you once you start to know yourself well enough, like as in you introspect with yourself, and you respect whatever shape you are, who whatever it is that you've got, I find that you do get some level of insight inside to tell you, and gives you cues. You know, when you get like gut instinct, oh man, that's a good thing, because that means you, whenever you meet people, sometimes you can get a feeling of them already, and that means something. And I do believe that as humans, we operate in this world where our intentions and what is going through inside of us that's invisible, there are people who, when they have mastered themselves at a level, they can feel it, they can pick it up. It's like almost this piece of information that maybe it's not said, but they can feel it and pick it up. And that is what you can navigate through the dramas of your life. And that's why for me, acting is so good. Because if you're really, 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 if you really, really honor the craft, man, acting gives you so much cues about the world. When you meet people, we can pick things up straight away, because you're not like trying to force going to where you want to go to. You're just kind of like watching. Of course, you have an idea where you want to go, but you're not set on it. You're not blinded by that. You're like, okay, this is what I want to do. But let's see what the environment gives me. And let me observe what is going on with the people around me. What are their dramas? What's going on with them? Because sometimes you might have an intention of where you want to go, but maybe sometimes also because in your environment, the energy, or the what they're preoccupied, will sometimes affect what you do. Because I do believe that if, for example, you believe what you're doing is right and you're really passionate about it, but if there's going to be like 100 other people and they don't believe you, as much as you can still make it, but there is still a lot of drama and tension that you'll have to keep on going and getting across to get to where you want. But you still have to go, okay, is it worth it? Do I still put myself through this struggle? And if you do believe it, you go, okay, you know what, I'm not going to get affected by the drama of what people say. I'm just going to keep going, because I do believe wherever it is I want to go, I believe that's where I'm supposed to be. And you go for it. But there are people, of course, like any side of drama, they fold. It's because their attention is too much around their environment, not really on where they want to go and committing to that vision, and therefore it gets them down as well. Yeah, but martial arts helped me because it's allowed me to connect a lot with my body and I would say my spirit, because when you do martial arts, you do things in a rhythmic pattern. Sometimes you go into a zone where there's nothing else in your head except the body doing a certain thing again and again and again, and it's quite serene. And especially in meditative spaces, in meditation or martial arts, you find spaces where you're like, wow, I feel like I've got the answers. Yeah.
Totally. And I think that it's so interesting that you say people get so focused on their environments, because I think that's so relevant to both career things and life things and moving through space and time, and also just like simple interpersonal human interactions where it's like, oh wait, like this, like conflict has arisen. People get so obsessed with the internal aspect of being like, oh, but like how is this moment affecting me, versus like, oh no, what I would actually, my goal in the future is like a resolution. Like there's so much that really applies to so many facets of life. And I see how you're saying that you really are dedicated to being an actor, and that's the path you're going in now. Something you said a bit earlier, not in a contradictory way, but in a something that's really led you here, is the way that you've managed to reverse engineer, I believe the phrase you used, your way into the career you have now, like Last King of the Cross, like all this amazing work you've done. Can you speak a little more to what that reverse engineering is, what it looks like for you?
So, a lot of the things that I find that has determined what I am today is it stems a lot back in my childhood, right? So I remember there was a point where being like, the loser and having no friends growing up in, primary school, high school, there was a point in my life where I was like, oh, I don't want to be like this. I crave to be seen and heard like it. And I remember watching people like I'm such a big on people's watch, like just I don't want to say stalking, but like I'm watching people going, wow, they've got friends, I got this, and I'm just watching like, and then it got to a point where I was like, I had a moment where I remember going, if I don't make a change, boom, 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 this is where my life is going to be. It's not going to change. It's going to be, it's set on a trajectory on being this particular person. And it's no one else's fault but myself. And I had to get that in my head. And then I go, okay, well, if I want to be someone who's seen and heard, what do? I gotta look, I gotta observe, who do I want to be? What attributes do they have? So I did a lot of observation, and I, to be honest with you, reverse engineering is another thing I use across every field that I've been able to be involved in. So for example, working documentaries or being a director or editing, like all these skills is like, okay, I need to have that skill. How do I acquire the skill sets to get me to that point? So a lot of times it's just figuring out, the steps and just really just, ticking them off. And I think that if people do that, it's the goal that they want to go for is less overwhelming. And another thing I love doing is hypothesizing. So for me, I was like, back in the days, I had this idea of trying to meet Jackie Chan, and this is during my teen days. And I was like, how am I going to meet Jackie Chan? How am I going to meet Jackie Chan? And I thought, oh, what if I made a documentary, a fake documentary trying to find Jackie? I ended up like putting out a call out on like I remember Facebook. I'm like, hey, I'm Maria Tran. I don't know Jackie. We're not related. I'm gonna go find Jackie. And there was just all these crazy videos on YouTube at that time. And then 8 years later, I got to meet Jackie because Jackie's people saw crazy videos of me reenacting a lot of his scenes as Jackie, like dressed up with his little bowl cut and his costumes and doing the actual same fight sequences. And then when he came to Australia, his production seeked out the Australian government and screen agency for me to be a part of his film they was making in Sydney. So yeah, so doing silly things like that, going, I want to meet him. What am I going to do? Okay, let's come up with a crazy idea like this. And then in Australia, there was a time where I was observing. I was like, when people who have microphones are very powerful because they can just stick it into someone's face and people just answer it. And I always am fascinated about people who are in media or actors, right? And I remember me and my other friend were like, I'm like, hey, what if we pretend we set up and create like a TV online show thing, right? And he's like, how are we going to do that? We don't have like, we don't have a name. Like, we could just make it up. We call it Vietlish. And we went around at that time with a small camera phone with a microphone, which was, I made out of PVC pipe, spray painted black, and then put in like a, sort of like a hood cover to make it look like a, microphone. And that's actually a microphone that you can, you record people's voice. This is probably 10 years ago, guys. I think I was thinking ahead of time. And then we ended up creating this crazy platform, and we had other like companies. Well, I would say they kind of looked at us like, oh, you are a show. Can we invest in it? And I was like, what? Okay, yeah, sure. So then people were giving us money to keep our little online platform going. And then I realized to myself, oh my gosh, we just come up with crazy ideas and we just execute it. And all of a sudden, when you do that, people believe in what you put out there. You know what I mean? So if I can meet Jackie, if I can create stuff, if I can create an illusion that I am maybe on the road to being, one of the world's best compelling dramatic actors, if I just put it out there, or at least myself, put it out there, there is at least something that every single day my subconscious self is going to work towards it. But a lot of people don't dare to dream big. I think I find people quite vague. So when I meet people, they're like, yeah, I just want to be an actor. Yeah, I'm an actor. I'm an actor. Yeah, I'm an actor. I just want to get my stuff out there. It's a very common narrative. I'm like, oh yeah, so what kind of stuff you got? I don't know anything. Anything like that, they're going to give you anything because the world, if you're not specific, you get anything. And that's what I realized with life. You go, no, I would love to get this role. And that for me, first off, it was action roles. And I got so much of it. I'm like, maybe I want to do dramatic role, because I had a lot of casting directors going, oh, Marie, you do the action, but you don't look like you can do the drama. I was like, oh, okay. How do I angle? How do I figure out this drama stuff? So then I started to focus on that. So I really think that you gotta be bold. You gotta really, really, really funnel in exactly what you want. You tell people, and remember, it can change along the way. Yeah, I'm sick of that. I'll change. It's fine. But you have to be bold enough to say, this is where I'm going. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's so striking when you're like, oh, if you people are like, oh yeah, like I just kind of want to do anything, like you will get anything is such a powerful thing to say because it's absolutely true. Because if you're like, oh, you know what, I'll do anything, then you can't be like, ah, but I'm here and I'm doing anything. Like you can, the turnaround on that is so fascinating. And I also so would you consider yourself someone who believes strongly in manifestation, or do you think that, because I know manifest the idea of being like a manifester is very popular right now, but would you consider this being very into manifestation, or would you put this in a different category?
I would say there is, I think, that term, like, in this age is very accessible, and I think it is in that realm.
Mhm.
um at the same time, like, I usually try to avoid that word because a lot of people will come up to me, yeah, I've manifested my thing, but it's not working. And I'm like, what does even manifesting mean to you? I put it on the board and I looked at it, and I would, like, meditate, and how come it's still not getting there? And I feel like, especially if you look at manifesting on a very superficial level, it would not work. Manifesting is very personal, and it's only you know if you're actually really believing it, because sometimes you might go, yeah, I want to be like, I've met a couple of my colleagues who are like, yeah, I want to do acting and stuff, but when the opportunity comes, they tend not to choose it, or they do things that just kind of, they are in essence sabotaging themselves, right? And then they don't quite understand that they're actually sabotaging them. But this is what I want. Like, that's what you say, but your subconscious or whatever it is going on inside doesn't believe in it. So you keep on making choices that don't really get you to where you're going, because there's a part of you that's holding you back. So I really think it, but to solve that issue, you really gotta introspect. Like, you gotta learn to every single day find different parts of you and have conversations with it. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but there's sometimes parts of you that are darker, some parts of you that are just, not happy. And you need to understand it's all a part of you, and come to terms with it. Yeah, okay, so you know what, maybe I don't feel that confident in this. Yeah, I do this, but when I have my alone time, I feel not that great. Why? You know what I mean? And then you just keep asking the why. And most of the time, I find is that people who tend to sabotage themselves is they have this thing where they focus on themselves way too much. As much as manifesting is yes, it's about where you want to go, blah, blah, blah. But in essence, is if you actually want to get to where you want to go, you actually have to think like holistically, like the fact that what you're doing is going to help people. And it's about helping people that actually innately gets you there, which is weird because each time I focus on myself, for some reason, it doesn't work out. But when I go, you know what? I want to be able to, do the acting thing because, I have an image of, little girls, watching me on TV and go, oh, mom, I want to be like her, and for some reason that gives me a good feeling. It's not about me wanting to be an actor, being on screen, being seen, look at me. It can't be that. It has to be something, a ripple effect of it for the world. And I know it's really hard because a lot of actors, we focus on ourselves a lot because that's what we know, but we kind of have to split ourselves up when we kind of like creating something bigger, because for us to be where we're going, it has to be bigger than us. It has to be. The successful, I say, people like who are actors who make it and who don't, go into the drugs and all that shit, right? Is because they're thinking big picture. Because if they weren't, they'll be going into all the selfish things to make them feel good, right? And therefore, in essence, they can't really have a sustainable career because they're fixated on all the hedonistic things to make them feel good. But to really, we got to start thinking of ourselves as a part of everyone and seeing how we can create a shift for other people to also feel like they belong. Like, that's how I kind of feel. And it feels sounds a bit trippy, but that
No,
makes me
not
you
it
know
doesn't sound trippy at all. I think that's so it's so important and it's so true. And I think you really touched on two different things here where modern manifesting, like when it's done actually it's great, but the idea to so many is just like, oh, awesome, I thought about it, I accepted it as true. It's like you still have to do the work to do that. And I think going into, you're asking yourself why, it's both a combination. Of course, there are two things it could be, where on the one hand it could be like, oh, you do really want this thing, however you're not actually willing to put in the work for it, or you're self-sabotaging from putting in the work. Or are you actually self-sabotaging because you're not accurate about what you actually want, and something in you is like, I don't want to take on the work that it takes. And then I think you
Yeah.
also make this other point about not doing it for the world and not just doing it for you, even though you have to figure out how your energy is connecting to the world. I think it all makes, I don't think it sounds trippy at all. I actually think it makes quite a bit of sense.
And to be honest with you, as much as like a lot of people who talk to me like, oh, you got all these opportunities and blah blah, but there's also the side where there's some dark moments I've been through, and there's also been moments where I've been blacklisted. For example, I was working for a company that was connected to the Weinsteins, and some of the things that they asked me to do, I said no, and from that I got blacklisted. And even a lot of my colleagues were like, why don't you say sorry to him and blah. I'm like, I didn't do anything, and then and the things that were asked of me is pretty much borderlining on sexual assault. If someone's asking you to take your clothes off in front of them because they need to check you out to see if you are worthy to be in industry, that's wrong. But I have to admit, it's really hard because sometimes when you want something, you might think that it's the right way, but you gotta also remember your integrity as a human being. So if you're gonna do that, you are then now trying to fit in. And I remember at that point, I was like, it was so strange because I was only 25, and I was like, I freaked out at that moment when that man asked me to do that. And I was like, no, 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 what are you talking about? And I remember he said to me, he was like, oh, how bad do you want to be an actress, Maria? And then I remember just being there stumped. I'm like, yeah, I want to be an actress, but I'm not just an actress. I'm a filmmaker. And I went on my little rant page, and then after that he said to me, well, you know what? You're too fat anyways. And he stood up and left. So he's now been exposed, like in like Variety and a couple of the media trades outlet for what he does. But at the same time, I realize we are faced, if we want to go to somewhere we want to really, really go, and it's quite not an easy task to get there, you will still get the equivalent amount of struggle and challenges that you will face along the way. And I remember that point, I think for a couple of years, I was feeling pretty bad. I felt guilty for saying no. And I had a couple of colleagues saying, no, no, but you did the right thing. I'm like, yeah, I know, but now everyone's, I've been labeled as difficult, as, thinks that she's too good for, all these labels thrown at me. And the only thing I could do during this time was like just make my own films, because I couldn't even audition for stuff anymore because my name had a bad rep internationally because of whatever this guy said. And it was funny. I had a couple of colleagues go, yeah, I heard. What happened exactly? Like so there's some word going around that you're like difficult. And I was like, wow. So sometimes like people in powerful positions, they do abuse it. And especially when we're kind of seen as emerging. We kind of seen as we don't have the power. We might have an idea what we want to do, but we don't have the resources to get there. They will come out, these types of people will come out, and they will try to find ways to take you down with what they want. And you have to find ways to go, no, 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 I did the right thing. I did the right thing. And I'm telling you, it was a constant battle for myself. Literally, it was like mental, I would say it was like mental gymnastics. You know how when sometimes people feel like they've got this thing where they're like self-sabotaging? But for me, it wasn't self-sabotage. It was me feeling like, okay, environment says you're wrong. I fight against that because no, I feel like I was right. I feel like I was doing the right thing. I feel like I was doing the right thing. I feel like, and I had to keep that voice inside me for those years until finally, when Weinstein's got exposed, he got exposed as well. And then what was sad was then when that story came out, the media came to me and they're like, oh, Maria, but you didn't get raped. We can't do a story on you because it wasn't like you got raped or something. Nothing happened to you. And I was like, wow. So now, not only that, I mean, yes, he's got done for, but then the fact that women not going through a traumatic experience is not worthy to be a story to be told, because women in powerful positions does not sell, And I got mad. I was like, okay, you know what? Systems like this, it's okay. This is all information for me to learn about the work that I need to do in this world. And I just got to keep on doing it bit by bit by bit by bit, being aware this is happening, but slowly we will make a change if we sustain ourselves and we keep on doing what we do, because in the long run, it's pretty much the survival of whoever sticks around. Like, Michelle Yeoh, she's 60 now and she finally got, her Oscars. If she stopped at any point in the way, it would have been over, right?
Definitely. And I think, thank you so much for sharing that story. Really, it is so important. And it is such, tragically, that is not a story that's, I think, foreign to a lot of women in the arts. And really, it's so brave of you to share it. And thank you for sharing it. Do you have any advice for women who, quite frankly, might be in similar situations, or might be faced with like an older man in power who are like, who try to pull the whole like, oh, but I can help you, I have the connections. Like, I know you said it was like a constant struggle and the guilt, but do you have any advice for women who maybe hopefully can kind of take a step past like that gap of feeling that needless guilt about it?
I think for women who want to choose the extraordinary path, I would say you are going to be faced with extraordinary challenges that will really test how much you trust yourself. So my advice is just to keep on developing your intuition, your voice. And I always feel like when we operate in life, there are things that will support us. Like, there are things that I feel like maybe it's not even from this planet or whatever it is. But sometimes, in your darkest moments, if you take a moment not to be focusing on yourself, you start to realize that there are things inside, or I don't know, like ancestors or whatever it is, that will guide us. I mean, I can't tell what it is, but I always sometimes have a feeling when I'm feeling really bad, I'm like, you know what? It's just a moment. And then all of a sudden a thought comes in, like, oh wow, that's a good idea. You know what I mean? And it just comes. It comes to you when you find ways to be in a relaxed state, and then you will find the path, because it will come to you in ideas, in when you feel excited, when you meet people and you feel excited, or you keep on pursuing something and then you get a good moment to connect, to learn something, and it keeps on amplifying. That's the path, and then eventually you'll just start to draw in the types of people that will keep on making you grow. They might come in for a moment, they give you a bit of insight, and that insight builds within you, and then you share that with someone else, and it continues. But I really do believe that we have a collective mission, even though we might be strangers. Like you and I, we were strangers before, right? But because we kept on persisting to connect, and through that process, we get a chance to have this really good moment to share and connect. And I can feel your vibrancy. I can feel there's a part of you that you're hungry and you are also wanting the better in this world. And that's why you want to hear these types of stories. You're drawn towards it because you want to fill yourself up with those types of experiences, because in future, there's going to be a time and a place where you need to share it with other people as well. And that's why you get excited about it. And I get excited because I'm like, man, there's other women out there who want to hear this. They want to be connected. They want to find ways to fight, or to rise up and stand up to the challenges, the expectations of the world and what they're supposed to be, because based on what they look like, and yeah, in life, you may look nice and pretty and joyous, but you'll get people who will always give labels on you. But at the same time, you realize, okay, you know what? I'm going to remove myself from what you see as me and just look at it in the big picture. Maybe people are doing things because there is insecurities. Most of the time, it's quite simple. People only do things that are bad because of insecurity. Mm-hmm. And insecurity is because they don't even get a chance to really listen to themselves. Whereas the people who are confident, they spend a lot of time just having conversations with themselves and going, what does this moment mean? Oh gosh, I got a flat tire. What does that mean? It means I should slow down. Okay, yeah, I'll take that. Okay, I'll take that. Cool. All right, and keep going. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's why intuition is such a powerful thing. And I think that's going to be the thing that gets people to be more connected with themselves. And as we are connected, we got to start with ourselves. We connect ourselves first. We build communities that become more connected with themselves as a collective. Then we can face the big oppressors. We can face the big forces. We can face things that are trying to control what good nature we have. Because a lot of times when people look at what we have, they want to control that because they want a bit of that. You know what I mean? Whether it's a relationship or whatever, you notice that the dynamics are the same. You know, there's something good, people want to control it. You know, but what if the good thing we can show, but we can also show them that we are also strong and we do see the world, the yin and yang of the world. We are compassionate. When things are going past a certain point that is not going, that's not good, we're going to stand up saying no. We are okay to say no. And we have that ability to do that without having a guilt, because we are representing not only us, but the rest of the other women or the rest of other people who are oppressed.
That's so powerful. Thank you. Really, I like it's even hard to respond to that because I completely agree. That's really amazing. It's just about like building community, amplifying the voices. It's powerful. Before I know we're getting close to the end. I would be so remiss if we did not talk about Phoenix Eye Films. The production company, you are the founder of it. You have performed in the film. You've done so much with it. Just how did that get started? How did that come to be? What's the name?
Yeah. Okay. So Phoenix Eye Films, it actually started because after working in overseas, working on some big action films, I kind of came back to Australia and I was like, oh wow. So I've just done all that. But what does that mean for me now? I'm in this other country that doesn't quite get what I was doing internationally. And not only that, I was working in the film industry in Australia, and I always noticed most of it were men. Okay. And then I realized also that men have a particular energy when it comes to filmmaking. It's very bro, like very rough. Whereas women, we're actually quite intuitive and we're very facilitative. So I started Phoenix Eye as a female-led film production company because I wanted to give like more opportunities for women to say how they feel rather than just being a supporter of a project. So Phoenix Eye, we have both men and women, diverse people, but most of the time we do have a way where it's facilitated. So it's not just I'm the director, it's my say. No, that's usually a very male dominated way. Whoever's the top of the chain is the one who makes the decisions and hires and fires people. Whereas Phoenix Eye, we were working with not only women, we were working with people with disabilities, autism, you know, people who never had opportunities to be a part of the film industry, to act, to direct, to write. So we started off with a couple of documentary projects, and then I would connect with local community groups, non-for-profits, to see if they can give us some of the space for us to come together and workshop some of these thoughts and ideas and creativity. And probably within, I would say, 5 years on track, we were making lots of different films. We were writing up grant applications. You know, a lot of the filmmakers that came through Phoenix Eye ended up doing bigger things. And it just became this amazing social enterprise. And the fact that it was female-led, it allowed a new way of creating an industry that wasn't like toxic. You know, it wasn't toxic, it wasn't cutting people down, it wasn't from top to bottom, it was facilitative. So that was a particular interesting phase. I still have Phoenix Eye. Phoenix Eye is now run by Therese Chen in Australia. I'm still trying to figure out in the US, but of course now I'm doing the acting, so it's still going to be there. But it does represent that once you have a production company, it means, I think in the outside world, it means, oh, you're serious. You're not just an artist. Because, you know, sometimes you're an actor. It's, oh, you're just an actor. So what? But if you go through all the legalities to set up a company, then it's just, people tend to respect you. Business to business transactions are much more better. And also you have more resources to potentially make your own thing. Because when you make projects from a business, from a company perspective, you usually get more funding. And then you can figure out how you distribute it, how you keep your company going, and what the philosophy of your company is. And not only that, you come to a point where you're like, how do you create this company where it's not just you anymore? Like other people can feel like that's them. Because what if one day you get hit by a bus? You know, you don't want that to go down. You want that to keep going, because things have to be beyond you to really leave a legacy and have an effect. So yeah, that's Phoenix Eye. We've done quite a bit of things. We've even produced, and I directed my first action thriller through my company. We only made it on, I think it was $7,000, a whole feature film, top to end, with lots of action. And that was a couple of things we wanted to put out there to the world, that we can make a film that is engaging, good storytelling, good action for very little budget. And so far, from the response to a lot of different producers that would watch the film, like, oh my gosh, how do you make it that for this amount? This is ridiculous. It's like Rodriguez style on this big action film. Like, I'm like, it's community. It's the power of the community. And a lot of the actors that are on that film, they've never been actors, but they had a passion to learn. So when they had a passion to learn and they're really excited about something, they will pick it up quick. And because that's the same process for me as an actor. I didn't learn it through the traditional route. I learned it because I had a burning desire, and then I was connected to mentors and people who wanted to help me grow. And I absorbed a lot of the learnings really quickly because I knew I had to, because it was for something bigger than me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then can I ask, where did the name of the company come from?
Phoenix Eye. Yeah. So Phoenix Eye was quite interesting because I always think of a phoenix as, like a bird that dies and, turns into ashes, and it rises up again. And I'll be honest with you, when I created Phoenix Eye, I was going through a really bad toxic relationship, a breakup, homelessness, a bunch of things, right? And then when I got out of it, and just learning the ropes of making a company, I wanted it to represent people who felt like, they've been down at the bottom, and now they're able to let go of all of the past to then build a new them. And I think through the lens, and especially a lot of the people who are part of Phoenix Eye, they've been through a lot of struggles, trauma, and it's become a group where we all look after each other, because we know sometimes the trauma we go through can be something that keeps on repeating itself for the rest of our lives. But at the same time, the interesting thing is, because we might have experienced a lot of these things, it actually gives us a different way of seeing the world when it comes to making something, whether it's a film or whatever art piece you're trying to do, or whatever initiative. There's a bit more of a fire. So when we see something, and it's interesting because I work a lot when I was teaching in Australia for some of the film schools. I was actually kind of having a look at the different students, and some of the students who kind of have it all, like daddy, mommy paid for everything, and you know, I mean, the way they would make decisions is very fluffy. So they would just make it that. I don't care, whatever. The ones who struggle, I would watch them make decisions, and whatever decisions they make, it's always so loaded. Like, it's like, yeah, this is because of this. It's always very thought out. And I realized, why is that the case? It's because they don't have the luxury to not be thoughtful, because they've struggled so hard to get here. They really need to really exercise every sense of who they are, and make sure when they make a decision, it's going to mean something. So everything they do means something. And I work with a lot of directors who are part of Phoenix Eye. I noticed the ones, like there was one autistic young man who's a part of it. And it's funny because socially he's very awkward, but when he makes a decision, and I look at some of his photography works, I'm like, how do you do? He just like snap, snap, and you think he's just candid about it, but the quality of his work is just profound. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
it's interesting because these people, we get overlooked all the time. Like we're not, because we're not like a bravado, we don't look like a certain way in what society deems us to be. We kind of get overlooked. But for me, Phoenix Eye is about that. The fact that, these types of people who come from the struggle, who've been burnt, and now they're trying to rise up again, they have a particular eye, and that eye is they want precision in their craft. That's what I call Phoenix Eye.
That's beautiful. I love that. All right. Well, sadly, we are really at the end, but I just want to ask you my favorite interview question to ask anyone, which is, what is something that you love to talk about that you wish people would ask you about more?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think if you asked me, it was quite of a process for me to answer, because whenever people ask me really good questions, like you've asked some really good ones today,
Thank
and it
you.
really I really I want to thank you for, but especially the big picture stuff, and finding asking questions that go towards that. That's some of my joys, is to be able to help people, and as well as finding how, people in situations that they can't get out of, go go to where they want to go. And I think people don't, a lot of times, overlook that story. And it was good today I get a chance to share it as well, because I don't really share it to everyone, because sometimes it doesn't fit the narrative. Oh, you're so cool, you've done all this stuff, but it's like, no, but I came from a place of struggle as well, and I want people to not see me as, oh, look at that person on the outside, but I want people to go, hey, I, I I can relate to her. Maybe I can go down that path, or maybe I can start thinking I can be more active in who I am. But yeah, you've asked me some really good questions.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much. And oh, sorry, please keep going.
I was just saying, if everyone was like you, I think I would just have such a good time. So, yeah.
I'm so glad. Oh yay. Well, on that note, I've had an absolutely amazing time talking to you. You said so many absolutely like profound things within this 1 hour. It's been absolutely wonderful. But yes, everyone should check out the Last King of the Cross. And yeah, anything else you want to say? Any social media you want to promote? Anything else?
I think that's it. I mean, at the moment, I'm in between, because I live in Las Vegas, have Las Vegas in Australia. I'm always keen to connect with more creatives as well. Anything for me to help build a new community, or community where we keep on sharing, is I'm for. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Cool.